There's a weird phenomenon in salespeople where you identify like $1 million problem for a prospect, right? You got to figure out like, well, where does this $1 million problem rank on your list of other problems? Does it even freaking register? And you don't spend the time to have that conversation, you become misguided and you think that an urgent problem exists when one actually doesn't.
Scott Leese. Scott is an entrepreneur, a sales leader, an author, a podcast host, and a fractional CRO.
What's missing? Well, what's missing is rock bottom. Because what does rock bottom create? Rock bottom creates urgency. What is the hardest thing to create in a sales cycle? Urgency. You have to enjoy the process of it, to really become great over time. It's not that hard to just chase victory and be great for one season or 1 year or 1 quarter. It's very hard to have that philosophy and be great for 10, 20 years. That's the difference.
What is the best piece of coaching advice that you've ever received in your career?
It's a bit philosophical, but my friend Mike Lindstrom told me that nothing in life means anything other than the meaning you give it. So I sat with that in my career and thought, well, I'm getting started too late. Well, that's a terrible story to tell myself. I thought, oh my gosh, sales was so hard. It's not my personality. That's a terrible story to tell myself. I thought entrepreneurship is not for me. I'm too old to start businesses. Well, that's a terrible story to tell myself. So just reprogramming whatever happens to you, wherever you're at in your life, it doesn't have to mean negative. It doesn't have to mean positive. You can assign whatever meaning that you want to it, right? And my background is fairly brutal. I spent 4 years in the hospital in my early 20s fighting for my life. And, the story that I told myself from that is that I now have a superpower that other people don't have. And that superpower is an appreciation for every opportunity that we have and an extreme sense of urgency about life that other people don't have. So that's probably the best piece of advice that I've ever given, is nothing in life means anything other than the meaning we give it.
It's almost a hint of, I don't know if you're familiar with like the stoicism side of things and that sort of ethos, but there's almost a hint of that in there of, only focusing on what you can control and recognizing your own insignificance within the world, rather than putting it there. So I'm 34 and I'm only now feeling like I'm starting to get to grips with feeling like that. Was that a mindset that you're still kind of figuring out now and, grappling with? Because, thinking about someone at the start of their career or something like that, what can they do to try and embody that sort of mindset as early as possible, essentially?
Well, there's an element of maturity, I think, that, it has to, you have to arrive at. And for some people, maybe that's 24, others 34, some 54 or never. So, for me, I heard that when I was 27 or 28, and that was right when I was starting my sales career. But I had just been through this hellacious ordeal. So I was a fairly mature, in my mind at least, 27, 28-year-old in terms of what life had kind of thrown me, right? Do I still struggle with it? Absolutely, I struggle with it. Every time something quote unquote bad happens or doesn't go my way, you have a human moment of, a pity party or anger or frustration or what have you. But I think the key is to develop this mechanism where you move through whatever that gut feeling is straight away. You move through that to a more focused, a more mature, a more kind of positive way to look at it and approach it. I think it can be taught. I don't think it's innate in a lot of people. I don't think it was innate in me. And I think somebody calling it out and bringing attention to it at that time in my life, it was what I needed to hear. And so I latched onto it and I've kind of practiced it. I think I've tried to instill it a little bit in my kids who are both teenagers right now. And, hopefully they grasp this kind of philosophy and knowledge sooner than I did. They don't have to wait till they're 27 or 28. And hopefully they don't have to go through hell like I did in order to be mature enough to find it. So what can people do? One, they can they can seek information and knowledge about how people, I don't know, approach their career, approach their life, approach challenges. Just looking for these types of answers and speaking out loud the kind of problem is enough to get started. You can surround yourself with people that embody the philosophy or behaviors that you know think are optimal or ideal. Um, so it could be books, it could be podcasts, it could be personal relationships, it could be a mentor, a coach. You can look for this type of philosophy in where you go to work and who your direct manager is going to be. So I think that what somebody could do early on is just look for this kind of thing, call it out and sort of name it and say, that's how I want to think about life. And how do I surround myself with as many people kind of talking about this and thinking about this as possible. So I sort of absorb some of that knowledge.
How has that mindset and, piece of advice that you got affected the advice that you find yourself giving out now? What is that piece of insight that you find yourself giving to, whether it's sales teams or people starting their career or, at whatever level and in whatever industry and position? What is some of those most impactful pieces of advice that you find yourself giving to people repeatedly?
I think just not getting too down for too long, finding resilience and being able to bounce back, taking a crappy situation and analyzing it to find some type of positive and some type of good and some type of opportunity from it. Um, advising people, like I just kind of said, to surround themselves with perhaps a different crowd than they're around now. Sometimes it's coworkers, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's family, and there's different levels of complexity to extract yourself from unhealthy relationships in order to go seek something better. I think even just having this type of conversation with somebody that I'm coaching or advising or whatever is sometimes welcome, because a lot of people don't have somebody they can talk to about this kind of thing, period. So just lending an ear and, speaking from my experiences. I'm 48 years old. I've been in the startup game for 21 plus years now. Like I said before, I had 4 years of a health crisis. So I've seen and been through things that I think, a lot of people are probably going to go through and experience at one point in time that I think maybe I'm a little bit ahead of it and help on that front.
Do you find, when you are coaching those sales teams and things like that, what are the sort of habits and behaviors that you spot within those teams that differentiate between guys that are consistently hitting their targets, they're consistently, moving forward, whether it's, increasing revenue, finding more success, versus those who are looking a little bit more unpredictable? Can you sort of spot those specific habits and behaviors, or does it differ? Is it kind of difficult to pin down what those one or two things are?
I don't think it's difficult to pin down what the things are. It's difficult to pin down which person has those things,
right,
and for how long they're going to have them. And anybody who tells you that hiring in sales is easy or they've got it figured out is completely full of shit and lying to you. Because I've hired thousands of people across 21 plus years. And, if I get it right 75% of the time, I'm like crushing it, So what are the habits? I mean, I think you're obviously looking for somebody who's curious. They're curious about the skill set. They're curious about the industry. They're curious about just improving, getting better. They ask a lot of questions. They listen. They're open to feedback. I think people who are creative are having maybe a better moment than they've ever had in sales before. It's so hard to get a hold of people and cut through the noise that you've really got to be, something special to get a hold of somebody. Like, I just learned that you like surfing and that you like Star Wars, for example. So, if I was trying to prospect you, I would be thinking, how can I merge those two things together and get a hold of him? What can I send him that would get his attention and say, oh, damn, this is cool. Who the hell sent me this? Who's this? Who the hell's Scott? I should at least reply to this guy because he, figured out who I am and personalized something and it's relevant. So that creative element, I think, is super important. There's a repeatability and a adherence to process that makes people excellent. So, so many people in sales love to tout this badge of honor of I have ADHD and I'm all over the place. It's like, that's actually not great. I don't know why you're bragging about it all the time, which not everybody, but so many people in sales, do. It's like, I actually want the person who will do the boring thing over and over and over and over because they get the proper results. I mean, I've had salespeople who are like number one in the company decide to change their approach the next month because they were bored and their performance tanks. And it takes them 3 months to get back to where they were. And I'm like, what did you do that for? Why did you change what was working? Right? So the ability to adhere to this process, not get bored with it, to focus on the results, that is a huge, huge way to get ahead and a big differentiator as well. There's other things that are probably obvious. You want somebody to be kind of internally and externally motivated. You want them to be driven. You want them to have some passion. You want some charisma. You want them more and more to be good copywriters, good at technology and use of tools that are available and allocated to you. I think you want people to be well networked. All of these things, it's like ingredients that are going into a soup or a stew or something. You need a little bit of everything in order to have the best, possible outcome.
I like what you said about repeatable processes. I know that's something that you've talked about quite a lot, following you on LinkedIn. And, it sounds like that's been a huge part of your experience. And where do you find, because often when you think about sales, and this is me coming from a marketing background and looking at it from the outside, it's so much about pushing hard and moving fast and all this stuff. How much does speed and pushing hard integrate into a sales team where they're looking at that instead of just doing the boring stuff that you mentioned? Or do they kind of work? Does it kind of work together? Because when you think about repeatable processes, to me, that doesn't necessarily strike as let's move fast and let's push hard and let's, go. To me, it sort of signals more like sort of stepping back and building a system that actually kind of does some of that itself. Am I kind of making sense there? Do you know what I mean?
Well, you're right. Other people's interpretation of that is not the same and inaccurate. So, when I say build a repeatable process or do the boring things over and over and over, that doesn't mean call, the same phone number 500 times this week. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about understanding your conversion metrics, for example. Like I have to talk to 20 people in order to close a deal. Okay, so I'm just going to find ways to have 20 conversations, right? I'm talking about the way we sell. Like, did we identify a problem and pain for somebody? Do they understand why that's important? Do they understand the urgency of why they should take action now? Do I then talk about what we do and what my solution is? That's the right way to sell in my mind. So if I do that every single time, I'm following the process the right way. When I get certain objections from people, do I wing it every single time I get this objection and try to come up with a new way to reply every time? Or do I tell the same kind of story? Do I quantify things the same way? Do I have a similar process for dealing with failure? Or do I lose my mind if something doesn't work out? Do I get super excited when I close a deal and kind of throw in the towel for the next 2 days because I feel good about myself? Or do I kind of act as if that deal didn't close and I kind of keep grinding, right? Do I have the capacity to not get too high and not get too low? Those are elements of process. Those are elements of consistency. None of those mean you're going a million miles an hour. It also doesn't mean you're going at a turtle's pace either, right? Sometimes actually the fastest way to get somewhere is to just do the slow, steady steps, rather than run around crazy like a madman and trying to figure things out on the fly. I'm always having conversations with founders saying to them, I need to pause you for a second. We need to take like 2 steps back, make a plan here, put these things in place, and then we'll go run rather than just run, right? So yeah, they are not mutually exclusive. Speed and process are not mutually exclusive.
It's really interesting you mentioning there about the sort of founders and always sort of running forwards. And that's kind of been my experience as well. It's one of those interesting things, like, because we always associate speed with performance, right? And we've always got to be moving forward. And again, something else I see you talk about a lot is this idea of failure. And there are so many fluctuations within the sales industry when it comes to failure, and you're going to fail a hell of a lot more than you're going to succeed with it. You're going to get way more no's than you're going to get yeses. How do you go about dealing with that? When you are, whether it is a founder or RevOps or sales, I guess they're all kind of the same thing. And I know you've said in the past they can be seen as sort of separate problems. Or I guess even when you're talking to C-suite and founders, how do you go about sort of dealing with that failure and ensuring that you can move forward from it and deal with those no's as well as the yeses while kind of staying balanced?
Well, I think you really have to understand the difficulty of what we're being asked to do. If you think about the sort of stereotypical odds of success in sales is like 1%, right? I send 100 emails, I'm getting a 1% response rate, or I talk to 100 people today, and one person, if the one person buys, I'm like an amazing salesperson, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about a 99% fail rate being the gold standard of excellence. I cannot think of another profession anywhere where if you fail 99% of the time, you are the best in class. Yeah. Maybe one exists, but I don't know what it is. Like, imagine the best basketball player in the world. Imagine the best shooter of all time, Steph Curry. Okay. He doesn't make 50% of his shots from 3-point land. He shoots 43% or something like that. So he fails 6 out of 10 times, let's say. That's way better than sales. Imagine if the best shooter of all time made 1 out of 100 3-point shots that he took. Yeah. Or the best hitter in baseball, or the best. Imagine if you shot penalty kicks in soccer and you made 1 out of 100 and you were the best of all time. How do you deal with that accumulation of failure? So no profession is asked to deal with as much failure, I think, as sales. So you have to find a way to become impenetrable and unbreakable. So you have to know the odds. You have to know the math. You have to not absorb it and personalize everything and say, I'm a failure, or I did something wrong. Sometimes you did everything right. And the buyer is the one that made the mistake by not grasping it. So understanding the game and the nature of it is one way. I think you have to develop healthy habits and routines and things that you do outside of work to de-stress yourself. When I lived in the Bay Area, I used to go surf probably 3 days a week after work. And if you surf in the Bay Area, you're wearing a wetsuit and booties and hoodie. Like, the water's freezing, right? I'd go out there and I'd be pissed off about the day. I didn't close deals or whatever. Or my team was behind pace, just full of stress, right? Well, the moment you jump into the freezing cold ocean and you're paddling on like a 6-foot wave, you're not able to think about anything else. All of the stress and bullshit that you've been dealing with just washes away. And that was part of the reason that I went and did it, is because for me, that was an outlet to get rid of the negativity, to get rid of the stress, to let go of some of these failures. And the last bit I'd say is you have to lose some of your ego, and you have to let go of shame. I just wrote about this the other day. Like, letting go of shame is a huge unlock for your business and your career. So many people don't try something because they're afraid they're going to look foolish. You don't start this business because you're afraid to fail. You don't take this chance because you're afraid to fail. You don't leave a shitty job that's stable for a potentially better one because there's risk involved and you don't want to admit that you made a mistake. I don't care about all that stuff. I decided a long time ago that I've already been through the worst thing that I'm probably ever going to go through in my life, and I defeated it and came out the other side. So what the fuck am I afraid of? You think I care what Sandy thinks if my business failed? I don't care. You think I care if I get fired? I don't care. You know what? I'm healthy. I got opportunity in front of me. Like there's a perspective that comes your way, a healthy perspective and that allows people, I think, to just kind of cast away the shame of failure, the fear of failure. Is like, whatever, what's the worst thing that can happen if I fail this? You still got loved ones, still got your health, you still have opportunity. Come on. Right. And that type of perspective, I think, is what leads some people to be more successful than others. So I would seek it. There's no downside.
It's this idea. We've actually spoken about this with quite a few guests on the podcast, and it's through the prism of sales. But I guess you could zoom out and apply it to every aspect of your life. And it's the idea of not focusing on the outcome and just focusing on the process. And that's kind of like a corny and cliche thing to say. It's not about the destination; it's about the journey. But through the lens of sales, it was, if all you're focusing on is the outcome and making the deal, you'll often actually never find it. And actually, if you focus on the process, and like you said, talking to me going, hey, there's a surfing picture of Andy, he likes this. You may have missed that if you were too busy thinking, trying to calculate how much your bonus is going to be out, or how much your commission is going to be. Is that something that kind of resonates with you as well? I know, that's kind of tagging on to what you've just said there, but it's certainly something that a lot of people have said.
Absolutely. My kids play soccer and, sometimes I've had conversations with them about practice and about training, both on their own as well as with their team. And I can't remember which son of mine, but one of my kids said something like, I like playing the games. I'm like, well, you're never going to be that good then if you just like playing the game, and, Tom Brady, the quarterback of the Patriots, he's talked a lot about how it was so hard for him to retire, not just because of the games, but because he absolutely loved the routine and the rhythm of practice and training camp and competing every day and all that. He liked that part just as much as the games. Like, that's how you become great. So if you're only in sales for the victory, it's going to be a very frustrating experience. Like, especially if you're like, let's say you're an enterprise seller and I don't know, you have a $4 million quota and you close $1 million deal per quarter and you hit your number. Okay. That's 4 days that you closed a deal out of 365 this year. 4 days, you're going to be happy. You're going to be miserable the other 361 days. That doesn't sound like a good existence to me. You have to enjoy all the other parts. You have to enjoy seeking opportunities. You have to enjoy unearthing pain. You have to enjoy, teaching people about something so they understand it. You have to enjoy the chase a little bit. You might have to enjoy the negotiation of it a little bit, the travel of it. You have to enjoy the process of it, to really become great over time. It's not that hard to just chase victory and be great for one season or 1 year or one quarter. It's very hard to have that philosophy and be great for 10, 20 years in your career. That's the difference.
So what could leaders do, or people in a leadership position within that company, whether it's, sales leaders or, higher above, what can they do to ensure they're cultivating a culture and a mindset like that for their team so that their team aren't getting dragged down by those 361 days of no's or whatever it is?
Well, for one thing, they can talk about it and focus on it, and they could stop having every one-on-one meeting be a pipeline review of like, what deal are you bringing in this week or this month? That's what most people do, They could build and create a system and a process for people and teach it to them. and explain, this is what we're looking for from start to finish. This is how you should go about your day. This is how you do things. Most, especially early stage kind of sales, or if they have no process in place whatsoever, they have nothing documented at all. So everybody's just winging it, and everybody's just hoping and focused on when is that next deal coming in. So you need to become more of a teacher and more of an actual mentor and a leader of people. And too many sales leaders are not leaders of people at all. They're a dashboard manager, or they're a jockey who's just whipping the racehorse saying, come on, go faster, bring me more deals. They don't care about people. They're not thinking about helping Sandy long-term in his career. They're not thinking about helping Scott long-term in his career. So they command no loyalty. They don't develop anybody. And it's just this washing machine of repetitive, like, bring me a deal. Okay, fine. Here's a deal. Oh, bring me another deal. Oh, fine. Here's a deal. And then somebody eventually leaves and moves on because they burn out. So you got to talk about it. You got to teach it. You got to embody it. You got to make it easier for people, document the process, put it in place, hold them accountable to follow it. And then the results should show up in a more consistent basis. And everybody should be a little less stressed and a little happier as they go about their day doing it.
It's almost like not focusing on the results helps to bring the results a bit more. Do you think that's the main thing that the kind of, revenue sales leaders misunderstand, is that in order to drive the consistent sales performance, you need to focus, I guess, a little bit less on the actual performance of it and a little bit more on the people?
I think they know that. I think a lot of them know that inherently. They get distracted or sidetracked by the pressure from above, you know, and they kind of become who they hated before they realize what happened. It's like, I want to develop my people, but I don't have time. I want to coach and mentor my people. I want to give Scott more time to develop, but my boss is all over me. If he has to close a deal, I'm going to have to get rid of him next month. So it requires a great deal of like intestinal fortitude to be able to stand up to your boss and say, yeah, I'm doing what's necessary to get us as most deals as possible and to hit our revenue number. And in order for us to do that, I have to spend time with people. I have to give a shit about them, develop them, coach them, teach them about the right mindset, the right philosophy, the right system. I don't have to just badger them to close deals. So I have to absorb this bullshit from a founder and not pass that bullshit down onto my team. I have to act as a filter. And not enough leaders do that. They get bullshit from above, their nervous system short circuits. And then in order to calm their nervous system, they pass that bullshit on down to their reps. It's a terrible way to lead. They're afraid to stick their neck out for their team. I sort of infamously have done this for God knows how many years. I have a lot of challenges with founders that were trying to manage me because I was very protective of my team. And I had strong opinions about how I led and how I talked to them and the things that we worked on and what I would do and what I would not do. And I was willing to say, if I don't hit my numbers, fire me. Go ahead. You're going to fire me either way. So if I do it my way and it doesn't work, you're going to fire me. If I do it your way and it doesn't work, you're going to fire me. But if I do it your way and it doesn't work and you fire me, I'm going to be pissed and I'm going to have regret because I'm going to say I should have done it my way. Right? So I'd rather just do it my way. And if it doesn't work and you fire me, fine. I fucking earned it. And I think not enough leaders have the spine or intestinal fortitude to stand up for themselves and their team and push back on founders like that.
Do you think that like kind of sales management, middle of the company, do you think that's the main sort of choke point, which is where you see sort of execution and performance mainly kind of break down? or are there, because I know that's an example we've been talking about. Would you say that's the main point where you find there is that choke point?
I don't know if that's the main point, the main choke point. I think the main choke point is often frontline and who the salespeople are, and
Okay.
are they are they following the process and executing the right way. Um, sometimes there is a middle management layer whose job is to ensure that. Sometimes there's not. At early stage companies, there's not.
Yeah.
There's sometimes nobody but the founder. And then sometimes there's a VP of sales or a head of sales and the sales reps. But the choke point really to me is who's doing the selling and are they doing it the right way? Not so much like who's coaching and developing them.
Yeah.
Because if you're a salesperson and you don't have somebody coaching you and developing you in this way in your company, that's on you if you just accept that and tolerate that. Like there's other places you can go to get the coaching that you're not getting where you're at right now. I mean, you could change jobs. You could hire a coach, a sales coach. You could go to conferences and events. You could spend a bunch of time on LinkedIn and read what other people are doing and network your way to get advice. You could build a community. You could join a community like Pavilion or something like that to learn from other people. You can read a bunch of books on sales. You can listen to podcasts on sales like this one. And a lot of people that just have this kind of poor me approach of like, well, I just didn't get coached and developed, so it's hard for me to do well. Well, fuck. Do something about it then.
Yeah.
It's your life. It's your career. Like, take some initiative. Be proactive. So I don't know if I want to hang the choke point on sales managers entirely. I think the choke point still is like, who's actually doing the selling?
Talk to me more about you very briefly mentioned it there, the idea of, just the founder doing it or having, operating with limited resources. I know this is something you've got a lot of experience with, that kind of 0 to 1 journey.
Yeah.
Where are some good points to start when you are operating with that? You don't have a big team behind you or a large budget or a long runway. Where can you get started in terms of kind of scaling an organization when you're at that point?
Well, number one, you really need to document and build some sort of like foundational sales process. Like define who's our ideal customer profile. Define what's our sales pitch and our messaging. Define who the competitors are and why people should buy us and not them. Lock in your pricing. These are just like obvious kind of foundational things. But most people don't document them. Everything just lives in somebody's head. So it's really hard when you start to add people for the new people joining to figure out what the hell they're supposed to do. So the first thing towards scaling is just document everything. Just write it down. The second thing I'd say is you have to do a far better job of cultivating and leaning on your network to get your first sales. I think a lot of founders who raise money, they're pretty good about tapping their sort of investors for their first couple customers, but they stop right there when they should ask their friends, their family, their advisors, their larger network, founder network. You can hire people. It doesn't cost you anything to, maybe hire is the wrong word. You can acquire referral partners, for example, and you pay them kind of commission only for making intros that turn into deals. This go to network approach that I talked about for the last couple of years. It's an easy way to go 0 to 1,000,000 without ever having to hire salespeople, without ever having to prospect. Everything is just a warm intro. So that would be the second way that I would kind of talk about. And then get out there and work on getting your name and your brand, public facing. It's that content marketing motion, that demand gen kind of motion. Speak to the problem, engage with people, put content out there that they can consume so they learn about it. And the last thing I'd say is just the way that you talk about what you do needs to be less focused on your cool product and tool and all the features of it, and way more focused on what is the pain that you solved and why should somebody care about fixing that pain? Why should they care about fixing it now versus 6 months from now, or now compared to all the other problems that are on their to-do list? And then you can talk about who you are and what you do. And I think people get that all twisted and they make the focus all about themselves. And nobody gives a shit about who you are and what you do if they don't believe that they have that problem. I wrote a whole book about this, about 10 years ago, called Addicted to the Process. And I talked about how selling kind of mirrors the recovery process. You don't go up to an addict and say, hey, I've got a rehab facility for you. That's amazing. I'd like to take. You're laughing straight away because it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, it does.
Because no addict is going to respond to that favorably. Yeah. What's the first stage of the recovery process is what? It's somebody admits that they have a problem and they're powerless to stopping it on their own. Right? So why the fuck are we trying to sell differently? This is what I never understood. So an addict who understands they have a problem, do they then take action and check themselves into rehab? Absolutely not. They don't. They don't yet understand the destructiveness of their behavior. They don't understand yet the value of fixing their behavior. Maybe they're still performing really well at work, for example. They're just a functioning addict. So they don't see any value in changing their ways yet, right? So then you have to educate them and make sure they understand why they should adjust. It's the same thing with selling. Sandy, you have XYZ problem. Has anybody ever told you why it's important to solve that? What happens if you do? You got to educate the buyer. But that's not enough to make the addict change. What's missing? Well, what's missing is rock bottom. Because what does rock bottom create? Rock bottom creates urgency. Rock bottom is if you have another drink, your fucking liver is going to explode. If you use drugs again, you're going to lose your kids. You're going to lose custody of your kids. You're going to end up in prison. You're going to OD and die, and that's it. It's a wrap. That's urgency. What is the hardest thing to create in a sales cycle? Urgency. Loads of people you talk to are like, this is a cool solution. We have this problem. I definitely understand the value of it. Give me a call in January. I've got a few things that I need, right? There's no urgency. So you have to find a way to articulate the urgency to a prospect. You have to make them feel like they're at rock bottom. Only then, when you're talking to an addict, only then is somebody like, I need to change. Like, what do I do? Where do I go? Now they're seeking the solution, right? And sales should be the exact same way. After you've got somebody to hit rock bottom and say, like, I need to solve XYZ problem straight away, what they say to you is, tell me what you guys do. How do you do that? They're looking for you to explain the solution. That's the methodology that I've taught for God knows how long now. And it just makes so much sense to me. And it's so simple. And yet 9 out of 10 sales orgs that I talk to, they sell completely the opposite way. They are the recovery center going to an addict and saying, hey, I got really cool services here. Check out my facility. Nobody cares because they don't believe they have a problem. That's
such a good way of putting
piece.
I love it.
So how does a founder go 0 to 1 faster? They tell their story that way, in that methodology.
Yeah. Problem oriented. We had a guy called Richard Blundell, who's based over here in the UK. He's also written a couple of books, and we did a webinar with him recently. And that was one of his biggest things, was like, on the discovery call especially, he was like, no one gives a shit what color your product is. No one cares about that. All you need to do is go, right, here's your problem. And he was like, not just the stone in their shoe, like the nail in their foot. Because often you think you know what their problem is, but actually you can go 2-3 levels deeper. And I guess like what you said there, find creating that urgency, I guess, is the same thing as finding that, even deeper problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. There's a weird phenomenon in salespeople where you identify like $1 million problem for a prospect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're like me and you don't come from a bunch of money, like $1 million still sounds like insane to me. Like if you had $1 million problem in your business, Sandy, or I had one in mine,
I'll be
I would be
stoked.
like, oh my God, this is the most important thing I could possibly do right now is solve this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, but what if you're trying to sell to Oracle? Do you think Oracle cares about a $1 million problem? They might have 100 $50 million problems that they're trying to solve that are more important. So a lot of salespeople think that they've created urgency because they've quantified the problem. And it's like, this is $1 million problem. Of course you want to solve this right now. No, they don't. You got to figure out like, well, where does this $1 million problem rank on your list of other problems? Does it even freaking register? Is it top 10? Right? And you don't spend the time to have that conversation. You become misguided and you think that an urgent problem exists when one actually doesn't. Right? These are just a few things that, founders get wrong and salespeople get wrong. And, if you're trying to go 0 to 1 or 1 to 25 or 25 to 100, you often need reminders on this stuff. And you have to get back to the basics with it if you want to start succeeding again.
It's so interesting. I must be doing something right because everyone I have on the podcast kind of sings from the same hymn sheet on this stuff. Everyone's kind of saying the same thing in different ways. Like I've never heard the analogy you just used there, but obviously I've had Rich on as well. Richard, who is your partner with Surf and Sales, and he was kind of saying similar-ish things. So it's great to know that I feel like I'm on the right side of the tracks with that stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes there's like a criticism that happens from people where they're like, oh, everybody's just saying the same thing. And I sit with that sometimes and I think, well, why is that bad? All of the people who are super successful are saying the same thing for a freaking reason. And the reason is it works.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You don't have to be like overly creative and come up with some new explanation or whatever. Right. And I think what happens is everybody arrives at the same process or the same methodology, and you're just applying your own life story to it. Right. And for me, like I said, I got really sick when I was 23 years old. I spent 4 years in the hospital fighting for my life. While I was in the hospital, they were pumping me full of pain meds. So by the time I got my surgeries done and I was like healed from my disease, I now was a junkie. And so I was addicted to opioids. So I had to kick off of dope. So what happened when I started getting into sales is I applied my experience of health and addiction and whatnot into selling. So it's just my own personal story, right? And so whether it's Richard Harris or your other mate that you had on before, it's talking about solution selling and whatnot, it's like everybody has figured it out. And the only difference is like, how did it impact their personal life story? And that's probably the narrative that they put around it. Right. But fundamentally, we're all talking probably about the same thing. Mm-hmm. And if everybody who's successful is talking about how the process matters and, don't just lead with features or whatever the things are people are saying, you should probably pay attention. There's probably a reason why all the successful people are saying similar things because it works.
Yeah, I agree. Before I let you go, Scott, one thing I do want to talk to you about is surfing. We got to talk about it.
Let's do it.
So this Surf and Sales thing, first of all, Emmett, the founder who listens to every podcast, Emmett, you messaged me a couple of weeks ago on Slack and said Costa Rica in November, ? So I'm holding Emmett to that. And
there we go. Yeah.
I'm going to push to really, I'm going to push for a surf trip. I'd love to come out and see you guys.
Love that.
But it was great talking to Richard Harris in a couple of months back, and he was talking about it. And for me, so like I said, I'm from a marketing and podcast background, frankly, and I've only come into sales as Pitstop, the company I work for, and we do this, has pivoted into it in the last sort of 6 months. And to me, looking at it from the outside, it seems almost counterintuitive. But actually, as I'm having these conversations with guys like you and Richard, I'm realizing it's not. But I loved what you said earlier about moving, using surfing as like a crutch for when you have had a shit day and you can go out there and enjoy that. And I do that myself. I live down here I live in Newquay in the southwest in the UK, and I surf most days. And like you said, it's freezing as well. I'm in the UK, and I do force myself to go for an hour, and it takes me out of whatever work stress I'm dealing with that day. And I'd love to get more of your insight into that. And it's a big thing I have as well, of like spreading your self-worth out and not letting your career be the only thing you're proud about and what you do. I'm Sandy the surfer, but I'm also Sandy the podcaster and Sandy the marketer and Sandy the friend and, Sandy the jiu-jitsu practitioner and Sandy the gym guy and all these other things, so it's, I'd love to know that, your aspects about surfing and how did sort of surf and sales come about? And it's this idea of, correct me if I'm wrong, it's this idea of removing the stuffy conference room from getting all these people together and taking some of them out of their comfort zone and some of them, people like myself, into their comfort zone, essentially, of, being in the waves. I recognize I've just asked you about 15 questions there and just spouted talked a load of shit there, but I hope you understand what I mean. I just love to hear more about it and, the ethos behind it, really.
Yeah. It was born out of, a rebellion from the traditional conference scene. I'm not somebody who wants to go to a conference full of 30,000 people and scanning badges and everybody's trying to pitch you and you have all these like superficial encounters. You collect a business card and you said hi to somebody for 10 seconds and it goes nowhere, and you're rushing to this party, to that party, and you fly home 3 days later with a hangover and you're overtired and you're like, I don't even fucking remember what I did. It's not my scene, I would rather be around a small group of people that are like-minded, that want to actually connect, that want to learn some stuff, implement some stuff, and also want to combine and integrate life and health and exercise and calm and peace with their work life. And so I was in Costa Rica with Richard Harris and our families, and I was kind of talking about, and I was making fun of him actually, because he used to have to go to all of these conferences. And I was like, dude, your life sucks. Like, have fun in St. Louis for the sales whatever conference at the Marriott Hotel. Like, that sounds horrible. I was like, how come nobody has a conference at a cool place like Costa Rica? And why does it have to be so big? Why can't it just be like 20 people? And why can't we just do like half a day's worth of content and the other half of the day we like go surfing, and people who don't know how to surf get instructions from, instructors, Costa Rican instructors, and the people who are already good, like, we just have fun and kind of, hang out with each other and shoot the shit while we're surfing and get exercise. And then you network the whole time and you're talking about work and life at breakfast and dinner and lunch and, over a couple drinks, if that's your thing. And he sort of challenged me and said, well, why don't you build it, Scott? And I was talking to you before about, I don't have much of this like fear mechanism. So when an idea generates in me, I tend to take action pretty quickly. And if somebody challenges me, like Richard did, I'm all over it. So this was it, like Thanksgiving of 2017. And by I think March of 2018, we held our first event and sold it out.
No way.
So we executed really fast. And we've been holding 1 to 3 surf and sales summits a year ever since. Almost all of them have been in Costa Rica, but we held one in Portugal last year. So we did a European one. And it's 20 people. It's a couple times a year. It's usually in November. This year is November 18th to 22nd. And so we kind of adjust the content depending on who's coming. So if it's senior level people, we have senior level discussions. If it's junior level people, we might have cold calling 101 discussions. So it's never the same. And it's a blast, man. We've had a lot of people say how it's changed their life, changed their business. It never gets old. If I could do 52 of them a year, I would be happy. One a week, that would be incredible. Yeah, we just do a couple a year, and it's for a specific type of person. It doesn't have to be a salesperson, by the way. We've had marketers, we've had ops people, we've had CS people, we've had founders. I've had a CTO come twice just because they wanted to learn more about selling. All different industries, all different parts of the world. In Portugal, I think we have like 10 different countries represented at Surf and Sales. So it's a blast, and we stay in contact with everybody afterwards. We've got a nice little community that we've built. So it's a good alternative for people who are looking to get a learning opportunity and a little vacation at the same time.
I love it. It sounds awesome. Yeah. Emmett, if you're listening, let's get book talk.
Yeah, let's
teach you
get
to
there.
surf. I could teach you to surf. The irony is Emmett lives in Dublin. He lives in Ireland, which is like one of the best places in the world for surfing.
To surf, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Scott, thank you for sharing so many of your insights and stuff. Like I said, it's so cool to talk to people from all sort of different corners of this world, but it's lovely to hear that actually, you know, that advice that we all need to be taking isn't actually a million miles away from each other in terms of all the people that we've had on. So it's, like I said, I feel like I'm on the right side of the tracks having conversations with people like you. Cool. Where can people go if they want to find out more about what you do?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest place. I'm Scott Leese. I have a little surfer emoji in my name, so you know you got the right one. I do a lot of different things. I run a consulting business. I run Surf and Sales. I run an AI business. I run a consumer product business. I run a landscaping business. I'm a part of 2 different venture capital firms. I've written a few books. So there's a lot of different things that I'm up to, and you can probably just find me on LinkedIn and kind of filter off from there. Sandy, I have one question for you though before we leave.
Please go.
So I've never been to Scotland ever. I've been all over the world. I've never made it to Scotland, and I've never surfed out there either. So if I make my way to Scotland, will you take me surfing?
I would absolutely love to. It's on my list as well. So most of my surfing has been done in Cape Town, in Brazil, and here in Cornwall, where I live. So I've not been up to, there's a place called Thurso, which is the top of Scotland. And Thurso East is renowned as like one of the best, it's a reef break, but there's a load of spots around it. And I'd love to surf there. And 100%, Scott, I would absolutely love to, show you.
You're on the record now that if I make my way to Scotland, I've got a guide. I've got a surf guide.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll, like I said, lovely. And when I come over to see my friends in Austin, you can take me for some Texas barbecue.
Some barbecue. Yeah. I got you.
Yes. Yeah. Love it. I love it. Guys, everyone, thank you for listening. Scott, thank you again for your insights, and we will see you all for the next one.